Alright guys, today I'm going to print out a glider fuselage section for the pylon racer, but with a few tricks. Um, this is the fuselage section 2 for the glider, but because it has a buttress area in the middle for the servo, you need to make this thicker. But you don't want to have to sacrifice the lightness of the fuselage sections by adding infill to the whole section, right? All you really want to do is have a top and bottom layer, let's say 3 for your top and bottom layers. You want to have a one wall count, and I'm using a 0.25 layer height, zero point 0.4, all the usual settings, plus some other settings I've picked up for fine quality, but majority of settings are pretty much the same. But what I want to be able to do is have this section of the fuselage with a different have an infill section rather than the walls which have um, no infill, right? I don't want the walls to have infill, but and you can see they've got no infill in the walls, just two walls, because there's plenty of strength by having two walls, and there's some kind of layers or sections in here which are giving additional strength to the floor, and the floor joining with the walls gives this fuselage plenty of strength for landings and the like. That's why they've given this floor in here, right? So it gives the fuselage rigidity. But the um, this section here, we want to have infill, but not on these sections. So in order to do that, what you do is you do something called support blocker. And what support blocker does when you select it is lets you put a sort of cube in here and then scale and size that cube to where you want it to be. All right, and you can then scale that cube to the size you want, and then you can specifically set the per model settings. Once you've got your block created, you can set your per model settings and select this modify settings for overlaps. I've discovered is the one, and then select the settings that you want specific to that block that you've defined. So all you're really doing is saying, I want to set a cube, I want to scale that cube so it roughly goes around the size of where this buttress frame sits. As an area, I would then like to set some individual settings for this region that I have created. And they call that a support blocker. So it's just a cube, and you can set it on any object within your model. So then you can then determine the thickness, whatever it is you want to select from the menu here. So I've selected what? Shell wall thickness, top and bottom thickness, an infill density. The rest of the ones it picked up, oh, an infill pattern. I've really picked these, and I think it's picked up wall thickness and top and bottom thickness from here as the defaults. Pretty certain it's picked those up. But additionally, I've said, hey, I want infill density, I want infill pattern, and I want them on that specific cube. So that now you can see, and I've selected lines, 20% infill, top and bottom thickness of 3. So the top and bottom thickness of this cube, that's irrespective of these settings, it overrides these settings on the right hand side, which applies to the whole model. And you can see it coming into play. Look, so as that bit of the center section, or this buttress, as you can see, we can see infill starting to pour in to this section, which will give it a nice level of rigidity, which is exactly what we want. And it's given us a top layer here, and it'll give us a bottom layer on there. So that will strengthen that region for the servo, and also strengthen this buttress as well. Because if you're just going to leave it one wall thickness, no infill, then it tends to be a little bit weak. And when you're putting screws in here for the servo, unless you glue it in, because you could glue it in, it's not really going to be up to the job. So that's what I've learnt so far on how to go about doing that. If I just Control Z, you can see me moving this cube around. So if I just get rid of that, Control Y, that was another part. Let's go to prepare. So as I said, all you do is you select your object, you select support blocker, um, you select, I think somewhere in there, where you want your support blocker to be. Then you select, I think it's scale, select the object you want to scale, move that around a little bit so you can see where you want it to be, and then start scaling that. You have to then select move to move where you want. It's a bit fiddly, but you soon get into it. So I want this, oh, come on, please move where I want you to move. Maybe you grab the green bit. It's a bit fussy. So make sure I've got this on move. Come on. Ah, sorry, grab the red arrow. That's it. It's not intuitive. Definitely not intuitive. You've got to grab the arrows, as you can imagine. Grab the blue arrow to. Oh, here we go again. Grab the blue arrow to move it where you want it. It's getting in the right position now. And then you need to. We need to scale it. So we'll come back to the. Where is it? Scale. You can have snap scaling, uniform scaling if you want. I think I want uniform scaling to begin with, and then I can always reposition and resize it. Let's see if we got this right. So grab that. There you go. So just scale this where you want it to be. Let's try that again. See what I mean? It's not easy. It's not intuitive, but you fiddle around with it once you've got it. Anyway, that's your support blocker. That's what you're saying. I want this region to be something I want to select per model settings. So you then come down to your per model settings, and I think it's modify settings and overlaps for this region, right? And then select your settings and then say, yeah, I want on that blocker, I want some top layers and bottom layers. I want an infill density, an infill pattern. I say close, and now I can start messing around. Probably it's going to be lines, and I want an infill density of 20%. 3 layers top and bottom. Looks okay. Click away, and then I'll go and slice it. Now, I know that's not in the right position, but that is the basis of it, right? That is what you need to do. Obviously, you have to resize it, reposition it, but it will do what you ask it to do, right? It's basically you telling it, I want to put support blocker, and I want for those specific regions. Let's see if it's done something. There you go. You can see the infill in there, right? But not anywhere else. And that's the how you use this. A little bit more advanced. Personally, I don't think it's very well designed, but I get it. What I'd love to do is say, hey, just point to this region, you know. But I guess it takes a little bit more computer science and software to actually say, I want to draw a region myself around here with my mouse, and then I want to say, hey, that, you know, this region here, I want you to apply infill. Hasn't got that feature. You have to basically use this thing called a support blocker. Anyway, I hope you're enjoying your printing, and I hope you enjoy my videos. Give me a thumbs up, and I hope you have a good weekend.